This is a shortened version of my presentation I gave just a few minutes ago, another panel. With Space Station and what we're doing today, we're sort of bridging the valley of death, if you will, for human spaceflight and doing business in space. Human spaceflight is actually quite a small community, and to be able to do work on the space station is actually still a small community. You go to the telecommunications industry, there's much huger. If they have a conference, they have 10,000 people, 15,000 people show up, things of that nature. So what we're trying to do is to expand the human spaceflight business base, if you will, or industrial base, that will hopefully get beyond what has been traditionally a government-only endeavor, basically, and government-driven. Even though industry, from the big companies like Airbus and Boeing to smaller companies like Nanorex and the like, is that to build enough of a market, and what Ken Shields talked about, the supply and the demand. So we're working on both sides of that. Not only the modules, the rockets, the spaceships, but also the users, people who do the research, people who want to do manufacturing, things of that nature. So with all that, we have the government, in typical fashion, has to have some kind of a policy. And that policy is wrapped up in the space station's mission. So first and foremost is this international partnership that we have, governed by the intergovernment agreement for all the 15 nations that have signed on to Space Station. So that provides all the framework that we have for this partnership, and to have all the partners leading together in human spaceflight. The next is, on Space Station, we do a lot of research, of course, on how to get humans into deep space. And we're returning benefits to humanity through the research that's either conducted by NASA or conducted by private industry as well. And then, last but not least, the enabling of the development of this commercial market we've been talking about. So our vision is that NASA becomes one of many customers in a sustained market. Now, I talked a little bit earlier about barriers. One is actually access. The other one is the technology that we use is expensive. It's hard to live in space. It's hard to actually perform in space. Even for the industries such as the telecommunications industries, these giant spacecraft are not cheap. It takes a lot of people, a lot of technology to put those together. And if industry is going to go to, say, manufacturing in space, well, they've got a lot of work to do on developing that technology, make sure it actually works. You don't have to have crews there all the time to fix it. So all those kind of things can be experimented on Space Station. NASA is one of many customers. It doesn't have to be a government platform. It could be a private platform, privately owned, or even a privately operated platform where maybe the government owns the platform, but is commercially operated. We want to enable a wide variety of activities, talking about this market development across. Basically, we're trying to get out of the aerospace industry and get into other industries like pharmaceutical, agriculture, and other industries to actually come into this marketplace in low Earth orbit on utilizing Space Station. And last is to spur this development. In order to do that, we have some principles that we discussed with our stakeholders. We want to continue human spaceflight, not only low Earth orbit, but into deep space. So this is a big continuum for us and the government, that we want a government presence in LEO and in deep space, but also this also supports private industry on the ground to actually have a base for providing capabilities not only to the government, but to other industries. We want to expand a leadership in LEO and into deep space by utilizing the ISS partnership. We want to increase our platform options in LEO to have more than just the current ISS. We want to continue to reduce our government's long-term costs, and that's one of the reasons for this LEO commercialization development activities. And last but not least is to return benefits to humanity. I'm probably over my time already, but for the first time we've laid out what our requirements are for low Earth orbit. We want to, again, maintain this partnership. We want to be able to have our crewed operations to keep our crews proficient in things like rendezvous and docking and the like, EVA. We're going to continue to do long-term technology development, our basic research in space and life sciences, our national lab cases activities. We want to continue those things, and we want to have continued opportunities for other science as well. And that's all I got.
Hello, my name is Christian from German Aerospace, working for human spaceflight. My question would be a bit different, and I would be interested in your opinion. What do you think about product placement, or things like having a reality show up there to really I mean, bring mankind up there that they take part of, to send a Hollywood star or something like this?
Yes, so Jeffrey has been trying to do that before on another space station.
On a private space
On a private station.
On a private space station, so Sam might be surprised, we might agree more than
Yeah, so what I would say is that being a government platform, we have some limitations. Now we're trying to expand those limitations on what we can do on space station. It may be possible in the near future to be actually do these on the ISS, maybe if it was privately operated, right? And a private operator could possibly then go get other customers to do private, for-profit activities. But right now we're actually going to be exploring that envelope on what you can do on station. For pure product, whether it be advertising, whether it be selling dolls or something from that have flown into space or whatever. So, in the future.
I do have concerns about turning a government facility, government-operated, owned facility, into something that falls too much into the sending dolls to space. So I just want you to know I do have concerns, but if we can reach the right balance and dedicate a certain proportion to commercial and a certain proportion to the science and education, then I'm all for it.
Yes, sure.
Hi, Louise Fleischer from Stanford University. You're talking about a commercially operated international space station. I wonder how the Russian segment and the European segment come into this picture.
Yes, that's a good question. Most of the operations today are already performed by private industry, except the government's directing. That's the difference. So you go to the ESA control complex there in that Oberpfaffenhofen. It's I believe it's Airbus who's got the contract for that. Now it's government directed. Same thing at NASA at NASA at Johnson Space Center. The operations are mostly, almost like over 80% of it is actually already done by private industry. It's just government directed. And when I talk about a commercially operated platform, is that the government steps back from directing the operations and lets private industry make the decisions and do the operations themselves.
Hi, I'm Nadiatis. I work for GMV Insign, which is one of those commercial companies that do operations. I'm a Columbus flight director. I was wondering how you deal with the safety aspects in commercial operations and the fact that maybe companies don't want to reveal all the details of their experiments or some of the problems they have.
So we've been doing this for quite a long time now. So the companies we work with all appreciate that it's hard to do things in space. Things act differently, fire burns differently, water acts differently, and the like, and the, if you will, safety requirements that we put on folks have been pretty much readily accepted. We used to have a lot of requirements about mission success that were probably overly constraining for especially the commercial world. So we've pulled back heavily from most requirements except for safety, and they've been pretty much readily accepted because people recognize you don't want to be hurting people in space. So it has not been a real problem. I don't know, Jason, you want to say anything?
I would have just said the same thing.
Okay.
Rule number 1, don't endanger the crew. Rule number 2, don't endanger the space station.
Right.
And you still have mission success.
Yeah, exactly.
Right, anybody else? So then, next one is what Airbus's position on that would be. Oliver.
So,
is the reading
so I think, Christian, first of all, thanks for the great impression of the panel. I know that you could answer a lot of those questions much better than I can. So Forgive me, I got to change the pitch slightly because I think there were so many good questions and introductions already. I want to just pick on some of them and guide you through a little bit of a lessons learned on Bartolomeo. Have you heard of Bartolomeo? Give me a live shot. Do you know it? Yes. Good. So I don't need to explain what it is. So it started with a great idea. You know, big corporate organization, space station. We've done that for decades. Why not? But in fact, we learned very, very quick that we need to think as a small startup, as a young entrepreneur who has an idea to implement it. And we made so many mistakes. So when we embarked on that, it started with, oh, it's just a mechanical platform, and you attach it to the station, and then you have this great opportunity, and then you sell that off. But then very quickly, you find out that you operate in an environment which is not yours. Right? So you need to talk to ESA, you need to talk to NASA, and then you find out the thing is too big, because if it would be that size, it's way too expensive to bring it up. You could never afford that in a business case. And also you need an EVA to install it. So you need to shrink the size, second design cycle. It was not factored in the cost. And then you talk about, okay, I understand I need to utilize resources of somebody else. So let's rather try to liberate yourself from that. Communication. If you don't want to sit and wait for your data being down processed, you'd have your own. So we put a optical terminal in order to be, promising to the customer that he could have direct access to his experiment or whatever he wants to do up there anytime, right? So that's the next step and the next lessons learned. And then while you have to invest more and more, you're always coming to this point saying, well, is it still worth doing that, right? And you're still not having any customer. So that point of decision to say we start communicating about it, although we have absolutely no clue yet whether that's going to be a full package that makes sense, that's really this entrepreneurial decision that you need to take at one point of time, independent of whether you're big or small. And for us, corporate environment is like a bank. You need to pitch to somebody, and then he says yes or no. So that's really vital. And still, we've taken the decision to go for it and to get it started since quite some time. Here you see a picture that is real because this is in all labs in NASA where we test for the operations of integrating it. You see the platform down there. Still, we're finding surprises, right? So for me personally, from a little bit of a distance, the surprise, you need an airlock. Saying, what the heck do you need an airlock for? Right? And now there's somebody who has an airlock. Now, you need to go into partnership. Yeah, you need to share. And the business case changes again. Right, and you have to do that because you're operating in a unique environment, and to convert that into something commercial is not a walk in the park at all. I like what you said. Governments are commercial customers or partners, and we had exactly the same discussion on our side, and they turn to be commercial if they play according to your rules. We're not yet there at that stage. We're trying to get there at that stage, but we're not yet there. So we still don't have the full environment to get it all under fully our control. But the agencies are giving us a really great support for that. ESA is helping really a lot to overcome all these obstacles by having the right level of discussions with the potential partners, by pointing at the mistakes that we could do, by helping also financially. And honestly, I was really blessed when I came here because I met my first customer down there in the hall. He showed me a picture of his experiment he wants to bring up, and it really feels good. As a small Australian startup that is doing something about electrical propulsion. So that's really cool. And now we have with Bartolomeo something where we need to change because we need to convert from we know how to build spacecraft or station into we're offering a service to help somebody who wants to do his business. And indeed, besides some key questions on safety, it is the customer who decides, right? So you need to be extremely careful and not judging on what is right, what is wrong. It's the customer who decides, right? And besides Bartolomeo, we're trying to do that on other platforms. So we're experimenting to see whether it works or not. We have just rebranded some of our activities to Kiwi, which is a label that maybe you will find more frequently in the near future, where we are reusing available capacity. So we started with DLR. And we just said, why not reusing those containers, put something else in there for commercial customers, and then fly them to the station as quick as possible. And we experimented, and we found out that we can turn around much quicker than we did when we worked with DLR and with ESA. And that's not the fault of the governments or of the agencies. It's just that you're more focused, you're having more flexibility, You can take more decisions with less partners involved. And then you see also some facilities of others. You see STARS. We're collaborating also with NanoRex platforms, where we will collaborate in the future with many more. And to be honest, my personal vision for Kirby is that we will develop it in something which is like booking.com. So you start from a hotel, and then you ask yourself, how can I do the greatest marketing that everybody comes to us? But then now we learn, if you take a look aside, that there is a service above all of that, where I'm saying we should be the stairway to heaven thing, which brings microgravity where it belongs. So why not starting with the sounding rocket or the drop tower, and then bring people into the space station? So you don't have to go to the space station first. So why not talking to other partners and fulfill the overall portfolio, or why not getting into a situation where with a click in an app, you can sign a contract and you can deliver your product 12 months later, or 6 months, like you buy your app in the mobile phone. So let's learn from other business cases. We're expanding that further. We've just launched, on behalf of ESA, with the Japanese Space Agency, with the HTV, life support system that we will install in one of NASA's modules on the station. And if that works fine, we will sell oxygen. We will not develop facilities and platforms. We will sell oxygen. And guess what? There are other people around that want to do commercial space stations. These are our new customers. So let's think about how to industrialize what we're benefiting from in the joint co-work with the agencies. And while talking about some of our partners, I think we will be, or we are already, with all of you in a collaboration. Cases is helping us to make Bartolomeo truly global. That is not a European program, but a global program without a flag, really commercial. And all of you, you've somehow contributed to that. And just to finalize, my next big thing that I'm looking for, I want to put a robotic lab up there, right? With all these great arms that can do all these sorts of things. The difference, if you want to bring that in space, you need to have microgravity to have a really realistic environment. I think it would be a great deal to bring that up there and then allow everybody to develop their applications and do something up there. And maybe eventually it's gaming. Maybe it's gaming, I don't know. I still believe in the scientific value of the station, but it will convert from science to technology and then some commercial fabrication type. So let's do that gradually and let's do that jointly. I think ISS means partnering and commercialization of LEO means partnering. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any questions to Oliver?
My name is Kirsten Armstrong. What do you see as the best case scenario if an entrepreneur comes and wants to get their project or business idea in terms of time? What's the best case scenario for getting it up there?
We've demonstrated already, I mean, it depends obviously what it is. We've demonstrated already that we can do it within 12 months. So I think we need to talk. You just tell us what you want to bring up there, and then we try to find the right partner for you to do it.
Super.
Oliver, if I could add, it could actually be even shorter if it's a reflight or a modification of something that's already up there, or that you've flown before, it's just a modification. You could actually get it there, and you could have it ready to get there, waiting on a flight, within 3 to 6 months.
I think this process to get blessed to be on the station, that is really decisive, right? I mean, when we operated ATV, we always had late cargo. Very often because the already planned cargo was late in development, whatever. But that resonates, right? You could have late cargo anytime. So why not ask around all these Blue Origins and whoever has a flight? You still have a spare capacity that you could sell. And we have somebody who's already certified. And we just make sure that next week, are you going to be ready? Then launch, right? So I think what we can manage right now with regard to the requirements to access to the station, with a new idea that is not so complex, I think 12 months is okay. If you've been there already, I fully agree, it could be down to a week. It doesn't have to be difficult, right?
Anybody else?
Hi, Vera Moyan from Our City Design. A lot of artistic projects have been submitted, and we can see like a lot of young people start there before they get really interested. And before they eliminate themselves from how difficult it is to be in the science side. So my question is, like, what is the limit of qualification of these, startup or commercial, if art would help market your company and what you do? I mean, can we send more artistic works?
Absolutely. I think it always depends on what is your purpose and what you want to do. We've seen last year in Adelaide, we've seen a school case. I think it was, Catherine, I've seen you over there. Was it third graders or fourth graders or something like that?
Yeah, third graders were the youngest.
But the third graders were with a small competition, bringing a kilo up there. And they came with great ideas. Of course, now you don't have to ask for the purposes. It's like their own business case. This was just for the purpose of getting them inspired and getting something up there. As you do that, you could do that very well. Our Kirby poets have talked to companies like Ferrero, where basically I'm saying that this is the point where as a scientist you stop asking the question, why, right? Because if somebody wants to go there, why not enable that? And I think putting artwork up there, I think it's a great idea. And I think there are many, many more great ideas around, and then it depends on the materials, just to make sure that your artwork is not outgassing too much and stuff like that, because it may change its structure when it's up there. But this is exactly what we're here for, right? Because we've learned for decades how to do space. And we want to enable people who have absolutely no clue about space to go up there and bring their idea up there. And we know how the space station is operating, or we know the people who know how to do it, and hence we can bridge that, right? And our role is hence changing. And you just tell us what you want to do, but art, of course, yes.
I'd just like to chime in on that as well. Within National Lab, a big focus area for us is STEM. Of course, STEM is involved in STEAM, bringing arts along. And so we have a lot of great partners who do infuse quite a bit from arts, communications, and even business management is wrapped around a lot of some of the STEM programs that we work with. We've got some partners that are in attendance here today from Dream Up. It's a company that does exactly what you're talking about. So that is happening.
So just to close on that one, we've just brought for DLR the small Simon cohort up there for Alexander Gerst. You take a look at that. I think maybe it's not art, but it's design. And our forecast, if it works right, why not putting it in the Museum of Modern Art? There's other things like that. The technology is art by itself, my personal.
So coming from art to science, John, what's your perspective on all that? Commercialized as platforms, how do we benefit from those?
Yeah, so I started my life as a scientist at NASA, and the first thing that I worked on was a 34,000-pound, 17-ton satellite. It was the heaviest thing ever to be launched from a shuttle. I thought everything was going to be like that. That was when I was in my 20s. I've got 5 things to share because I have 5 minutes, and you have 5 fingers, because your other 5 fingers are probably wrapped around the decks tonight, and I want you to remember what I had to say. Science can build on a pioneering market, and I think everyone gets the idea that this is a hard business because it's literally pioneering, it's forging the future. A lot of businesses will fail, but that's okay. And those that succeed have the opportunity to succeed wildly. And as a scientist, I think sometimes it's hard for me to admit, but science has carried on the backs of pioneering, on the backs of people who are exploring, on the backs of, we don't go for scientific purposes, we usually go for other reasons, and it's science that gets carried along or gets done along the way. So just be mindful that there'll be a mix of services and products, and if you want to do some science, then great. Find out how to fit in to the commercial environment so that you can move forward. And the time scale for return on investment is something that you'll have to be mindful of. If you're going to do, let's say, science or commercial to improve your next quarter's return on sales, you might be sorely mistaken, right? But so be mindful of the time scales on which you're trying to drive either a commercial or a scientific outcome. Where does value come from? When you're exploiting the International Space Station, I think scientifically and commercially it comes from one of 2 places. Either it comes from photons or it comes from molecules. You're either going to take a piece of material to the station and bring it back and transform it for scientific purposes or for commercial purposes, or you're going to learn something and transmit the photons, the data, down to the ground. And either that data might be commercially useful, it might be scientifically useful. So you have this symmetry in how you create scientific value or commercial value. And the beauty of this is that the government has already put in, as we have said, over $100 billion, of not just one government, but the partners on the space station, $100 billion. So if the scientific value or the commercial value happens to be, I don't know, let's say the gold in the ground in California in 1848, the government has already put in the railroad to move the molecules back and forth, and has put in the telegraph to move the information back and forth. Hopefully we haven't strung a wire down from the space station yet. It would sort of get wrapped around the Earth, but that might be fun to watch. Like science, like the commercial aspects, the innovators are the ones that are going to be successful. And you see a whole variety of really amazing, innovative companies here who are using and figuring out how to make money off of this, whether that's off the Bartolomeo platform or something that NanoRex has. These are the Levi's jeans, the Wells Fargo, the Union Pacific railroads of the future. Those are businesses that were built out of that California gold rush, and we still have them with us today. So why does all this matter? I think it's important, and no one has really stepped back and said, well, why, beyond the goodness of commercializing the space station, doing science on the space station in and of itself, what's the larger context, right? And I think the point here is that we are trying very hard to get that. You don't have to leave. When your child makes a noise, you don't have to leave. We understand. Come back, future explorer. This is to the point, right? We want, I can't see boy or girl, but little girl. We want, many of us want, for her to live in a world where human beings are beyond low Earth orbit, where we're regularly going to the moon, where we're regularly exploring and have a human presence outside of low Earth orbit. That's not going to happen. She's not going to have that future unless we fill the gap and fully utilize commercially, scientifically, and almost, I would say, on a mundane sort of utilitarian day-to-day basis, the opportunities that we have not only on the space station, but all throughout low Earth orbit for scientific, commercial, educational, social, and high-end quality of life outcomes. So if you want to know what it's all about, just almost left the room. So my time's probably up, so thank you.
Thanks, John. That was inspiring. Any questions from you guys?
All right, so I'm going to be talking about primarily Cygnus, because with the vein here, the idea that when we first started developing this product to take logistics to the International Space Station, it was really about the basics, food, water, just the very, very basic logistics to keep the crew alive. But what we've seen over the last few years is a complete shift to utilization is the most important part. And we're seeing a lot of cases, experiments being manifested on the Cygnus vehicle. We're flying for NanoRacks CubeSat deployments on almost every mission. By deploying NanoRacks CubeSats higher, they have a longer lifetime, so that's an advantage in itself. The deployment's done directly off of Cygnus. So just kind of give you some background here of watching the Cygnus and its mission. But for this audience, really the thing is that we're seeing the market for a Cygnus slowly change, and we see that continuing to change and be much more of an emphasis on commercial activities or national lab activities, utilization in general. So you can see the mid-deck lockers in the the lower right picture there, you know, those are used for very scientific experiments. And we're always looking for new interfaces and new types of services to bring forward. We've had a lot of discussions with cases on that. And, you know, this vehicle, I think, will be around for a while. And, you know, we're going to modify it to be more responsive to the needs. And we see the future being, you know, commercial and utilization. I think also this could become a precursor to an actual free-flying laboratory, because we do intend in the next year to, after the cargo mission is completed, to take it out for a spin for a year, and before it goes to its final mission, which is disposing of trash. So really I leave it open to you all that if you're looking for new interfaces and that kind of stuff, come talk to me. And you know, again, you'll see this product around for quite a while. In fact, if you saw my talk yesterday, we even envisioned that it could form the basis to continue on to cislunar space, albeit with a lot of modifications, etc. So it's an ongoing product, and we hope to keep it fresh for both the LEO activities as well as beyond low Earth orbit. And actually, let me just go back to that one last slide. That's sort of the takeaway here is, you know, more interfaces. And I did mention the Cygnus lab, but we now have a connection from inside the Cygnus to the ISS Ethernet, payload Ethernet. So if you want to put things in the Cygnus and leave them there and run the experiment in the Cygnus as opposed to bringing the experiment into the space station and plugging it in there, that's a capability we have demonstrated right now. And then the free flyer is really the sort of ultimate. So thank you very much. Any questions? You guys aren't doing good with questions.
Thanks. Irene Thompson with Aviation Week. Does Cygnus need to be docked to take advantage of that Ethernet connection, or is there a Wi-Fi connection?
No, it does.
Thanks.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
With you, Bob.
All right, hi everybody, I'm Jason, one of the founders and director of Made in Space. So just to give the brief overview, I'll talk a little bit about specifically what we've been doing on the International Space Station, but then I really want to spend some time about the bigger vision of Made in Space and how it applies to different types of commercial platforms as we see them. But first, I do want to thank John for kind of saying why are we doing this. That's actually the first slide. I always start with why does Made in Space do it? This is our mission statement. This is what the company, everybody comes to work at the company for, is to expand humanity through the solar system. I think a lot of companies probably have that big high-level vision. The unique thing about Made in Space, the way we see that vision coming to pass, is actually by bringing industry into space. We believe that humanity will become a multi-planet and a spacefaring civilization when industry goes there as well. So that's what Made in Space has been doing, is building the foundation for industry to be in space, specifically manufacturing technology. So on the space station, I think we're pretty well known for having a 3D printer that's on the space station. In fact, what most people don't know is there's actually 2 3D printers there. We put one there in 2014, which was a tech demo with Sam and his team at NASA, and then about a year later, we launched a commercial facility with Ken and his team through Cygnus, and it operates actually as a commercial facility run by Made in Space, and on a monthly, almost weekly basis, we're operating and 3D printing things for a variety of customers, not just the space agencies, but commercial customers on Earth. These are some pictures of objects that have been commissioned. Everything from big hardware stores like Lowe's, the home improvement company in the United States. We've had artwork. This is a sculpture that was 3D printed and crowdsourced by an artist. Most of what you see here are actual things that were designed and built for the space station. This is O2 sensor adapter that was used to measure oxygen levels. So most of this is what we've been 3D printing. The one image that's not 3D printer is this image. I love this one because actually it's two of our payloads side by side. The bottom one is the 3D printer. The top one is a new facility that we've been flying that is an experiment to figure out how to make optical fiber in zero gravity. And this is a really interesting part for us because if we're going to bring industry into space, one of the big holy grails would be as if you could make things in space that can't be made on Earth, but there's of course a market for on Earth for that product. That's what this experiment is for, is to figure out if we can make optical fiber in zero gravity, and by being in zero gravity we can suppress crystallization and make a much more pure, higher quality fiber. So that's what we've been doing over the past year, is flying this experiment. It goes up, builds fiber, and comes back down to Earth, and we iterate. So yep, over 200 objects have been actually made in space to date. That's 200 things that went to space and didn't have to go on a rocket. We find that to be an impressive number that continues to rise. So that's what we've been doing on the space station. I want to now just kind of talk about why the company's been doing what it does, and especially for anybody out here who wants to grow a startup into a small business like Made in Space has done. Hopefully this is some good pointers for you. How we take notes. I love this slide because a lot of people have asked me, how did Made in Space do this? You were a bunch of young guys creating a startup that put a 3D printer in space. And I think that it really comes down to the value that we hold in the company, which is to ask a different question. And we ask lots of different questions in our company. Usually if you ask a different question, you lead to a different answer, a different result. This is one of the best different questions I think we've ever asked as a company. It's one of the first different questions, but we looked at what the industry was doing, and while everybody was looking how to make better rockets, faster rockets, bigger rockets, smaller rockets, we asked the question, what if we didn't have to launch anything at all? What would that future in space look like? And surely there's lots of interesting answers that we came up with. One of which, this is an artist image that came up. This is early days of the company. This is one of those answers if you don't have to launch anything at all. In fact, you are launching something. You're launching these robots. But those robots are working together to build this very, very large multi-100-meter aperture antenna in space that could have never fit into a rocket. So that's one answer, is to build things that are unlaunchable in space. You don't have to launch them at all. This is becoming a reality now. This is, to us, what orbital and commercial platforms means is actually this robot. So we call this now Archinaut, like architecture, astronaut. And I'll play a quick video to get an idea of where it's at. But this has come a long way from this artist image. The video is still kind of artistic, but I'll kind of talk about where it's at after we watch the video. I think you can find this on YouTube probably. I guess I'll narrate while you watch it. So the video is maybe 2 years old now. This was the beginning of a NASA-funded program that we're just closing in on the phase 1 contract for, to develop Archinaut, which is this spacecraft that in its kind of belly, it has this new type of 3D printer we've developed. It builds what we call extended structures. These are structures that go beyond the size of the vehicle that built it. We actually hold the Guinness World Record for the longest 3D printed structure. It's a little over 38 meters in length that came out of a box the size of a microwave oven. So you can imagine Archinaut being able to build these huge, huge, huge structures and then connecting them together with a robotic arm technology to construct large platforms on orbit. So that's to us what a commercial platform looks like. And then I'll just close on just the last piece of news. I just came from Luxembourg, where we're really excited to make this announcement. We've gone global. We're opening an office in Europe, in Luxembourg, specifically to build the robot arms that you just saw in that video. So that's a critical piece of Made in Space in the future, is to have low-cost, readily available robot arms. So we're going to start building those in Europe. Okay, thank you.
questions for Jason? Please come forward. Yes.
Oh, my name is Harrison Kirby. I'm associate researcher at Ohio State, and you talked a lot in your presentation, as well as some of the others in their presentations, about bringing industry into space. And right now, industry is going through its own revolution. Some call it Industry 4.0, the next industrial revolution, next generation manufacturing. So I've already seen with the robotics and the 3D printing, sort of that those are key elements of that new revolution. What other elements of next generation manufacturing and Industry 4.0 do you think are going to be brought into space next?
Interesting. Yeah, so I think I share probably a contrarian view on what an industrial revolution means. My view is that we've been in one industrial revolution for since the first one started. And we've been seeing paradigm shifts. The paradigm shifts we've been seeing, and why we call it the first, the second, the third, the fourth, is actually changes in advancements in automation. So there's this paradigms of automation that the Industrial Revolution has had. And we're actually getting to a point where we're getting really close to near perfect automation in industry. That's why people are saying robots are stealing our jobs and software is doing things that humans used to do. That's automation taking its toll. There's another paradigm, though, that doesn't ever get talked about that is near and dear to our heart, which is the paradigm of location, where things are being made. And I think that's just as important to what makes a revolution or an industrial activity happen. Today, most of the things we all buy come from probably China, and they get shipped on big ships across the ocean to our countries, or moved across airplanes. And that's the location. It's easy to make it there. I would argue that space is a really interesting location for making things. And the reason why is any new industry is usually sparked by a new process. Okay, so Abraham Darby invents the coke oven, this new process to create super high temperatures, which makes readily available abundant steel. And then the steel is used to grow the machine age in the first industrial revolution. So that new process. Space, as a unique environment, has all these applications for new processes. We have zero gravity, but we also have controllable gravity in a centrifuge. We have a vacuum environment that's better than the world's best vacuum chambers on Earth, and it's free, and it's always on. The radiation environment to dump waste heat into is better. So there's all these interesting aspects of the location. And so the reason why we're focused on things like the optical fiber is because we see space as a really interesting location for manufacturing. And if we had to take a bet on what sparks maybe the next paradigm shift, it would be finding a better location to make things. That's a good question.
Thank you. So now, finally, from Ariane Group.
Thank you very much, Christian, that you give me the possibility. So, first of all, I'm from IAC Group. That is a new large startup from our mother house for Airbus and Safran. What I would like to ask you first, is there anybody of you who knows that IAC Group is not only building launches? So the point is that we have other products, and one of the products is for sure propulsion for satellites, because propulsion is always the main part. And you may know, what I would like to share with you is now what we are now gaining from being a customer of Bartolomeo. The reason why is that we have a new product line, which is electric propulsion. Electric propulsion like that is a new approach for us. To have electric propulsion, small electric propulsion with 10 kilograms of weight, talk about around 10 million of thrust for a reasonable lifetime and for 400 watts of power. So the point is that this kind of system, this kind of electric propulsion is a key for us, for all of us, because we have a change in the satellite branch, as you know. Not only relying on chemical, what we would like really to prepare still, but as well to let's say, to serve the new market, existing market with electric propulsion, with an affordable one. The typical market you can imagine is constellations, but it's not only about constellation, but for small satellites, for other purposes, to transfer if you want the universe, as long as you have some light and so on somewhere else for getting power. So, what is the new thing and why we are choosing Bartolomeo? The new thing for us is that we have a very, very short timeline for development. And that's why I started with a nice, let's say, joke that we are a startup. We started 2016 with an idea, 2017 to build up this kind of RIT, this kind of electropropulsion, but so make the proof of concept with a smaller one. For sure, to be honest, it's not a really new one, but it's really gaining from the experiences with RIT, with the electropropulsion for other purposes. We went through in this year even to come to a prototype module and looked for the first customer we just had a contract with. This is exactly where we are. So the demand is clear. We would like to convince our customer that we have the right product on the right place for the right purpose. And to support the so-called pre-series of electropropulsion for our customer, it's clear that we need qualification in space. We know experts who are working in propulsion, and I look at Stefan Ziegenhagen, for example, from IAC Group. They are doing a lot of ground tests, making all the tests you can do within the mission box or out of the mission box as far as possible. But really a demanding key is that the product should work in the environment where the customer would like to see it. To have the analog test is one thing, but the real test, the real demonstration is the best one. So this is why we went through this timeline, going into supporting our customers, showing that we are able to do it. It's clear for us, this phase for doing this kind of qualification of space is very much fitting with what Bartolomeo offers to us. So, from our point of view, for using the Bartolomeo as one offer we got, is that we get our test in orbit, it's clear. We get a return from space, which is even better. You can imagine the other opportunity would be to build up a small satellite, to make a demonstration on a small satellite, but we get rid of the hardware. In that case, we could get the return from space. We get the right visibility in terms of attractiveness, in terms of showing to the customer that this system is running, because we get information about that. We have low risks. Okay, there are some challenges, Christian. It's not always the best one. First, we are one of the very first customers, so we will help you, but you will help us. But we have to learn something for the first phase, it's clear. And it's always the same, it's about price and the conditions, you can imagine. Unfortunately, it's not for free. So we have you have your prices, we have our ideas, but still, this is normal in the commercial base. So for us, the IAC Group on Bartolomeo, we believe really on the value of Bartolomeo, of this way of doing it, and I'm pretty sure it's not the only one. There are other possibilities, but this is a very good example to take it as an opportunity for us for the demonstration capabilities and for new purposes and new approaches. And we see this as we will strongly support this way to use it, not only because it's business belongs to our mother company, but we think that this is a very good case to use. And this is the reason why we are choosing for other possibilities for other products in our company as well. So that concludes my presentation, and hopefully you now buy the Arkwright new electropropulsion, because we will demonstrate it next year, hopefully.
Okay, thank you so much for that good talk, and we are pleased, of course, to help you, and you help us, and we will hopefully get that. I don't know if it's even working. We will get that together. That's going to be all right. So, who has any questions here?
I have a question.
Oh, yes.
Hello, everyone. I'm I'd like to thank all the panelists for being here today. And as we talk about commercializing LEO and the need to grow that economy to really have sustainable base for deeper exploration in space, I'd like to pose a question to all of you, and maybe you could give a quick one-minute answer. What can we do to shrink the time frame that it takes customers to get their experiment or payload to space? We want to sort of see higher velocity in terms of helping people get there and have success in space. What do you see as the way forward to do that? Jeff, I'll let you start.
Thanks. When we started NanoRacks, the average time to get a station for a typical payload was 3 years. We've gotten it down, our standard is about 9 months through the same NASA process. Part of the process, the education, as Sam said, was getting NASA to understand that it's okay to fail as long as you fail safely. But I do want to push back a little bit. Sure, I mean, NanoRacks is always pushing. But, you know, for me, it's not so much the time. It would be nice to have less time. It's the cadence. I mean, the cadence is what's important. If I can say to somebody, you can get on this mission, this mission, this mission over the next 3 years, that cadence is equally important. So you're correct. Everybody, I'll use an analogy from the States. Everybody, you know, orders on Amazon in the States. It comes 3 days later or 2 days. We have people who come to NanoRacks and expect the payload's going to go to station a week later, and when it doesn't, they're angry at us. And we've even had them speak to NASA to say, yes, it's our system, it's not. So yes, we want it quicker, but for me, it's the cadence.
Standard interfaces that makes everything go so much better. And you know, you started your presentation with very standard interfaces. So super important to us, and I think it does make things a lot easier.
And we coordinated between Bartomeu and our airlock from the beginning. We had standardized interface all that.
That's a great question, Amy. Just before the panel started, I was in the hallway talking about the same topic, and the 2 things I said were exactly what Jeffrey and Bob just brought up. Right now, frequency to get to the station is great. There's a lot of transportation to the station, but cadence is a big challenge. I love what I heard Sam say earlier about all of the commercial and industry service providers that are embedded in NASA, really all of the international partner agencies that are doing things like running mission control and launch and all that sort of stuff. Me personally, I would love to see payload integration and safety certification be turned over to the private sector, directed by the private sector. You would see a lot of process improvement there. But it's critical also that cadence and scheduling of access is changing.
Okay, let's assume that part of this acceleration could be the part what the customer is providing to. So the full schedule is not only the schedule getting it up, but as well what is the prerequisite to jump on. And for sure, one thing would be very simple. We need a kind of bus, like a bus schedule, to know when it will start, and we need to know really what are the requirements. So what is really necessary to be prepared to be on one of the possibilities as that. So for that, we could accelerate on our side, from the customer side.
Yeah, so access, we have 14 to 15 flights a year, basically. So access, and that's only the last 3 to 4 years we've had that. So we've never had the access like we have now. So the access, in my opinion, being a long time in space flight, is better than it's ever been. And I agree, a lot of customers that I talk to is the access part, and it's the repetition to do it over and over again. One thing I would say, if you want to get up there sooner, take the crew out of it. Make it less complex. Make it, a lot of engineers try to design stuff, and when they go through a process that ends up being, it's the perfect thing, I'm going to fly here. Don't fly the perfect thing. Let it fail a couple of times. And we have the access now to be able to repeat it. Let it fail, learn something, then bring it back down, or build a new one and send it up. So that's what I would say.
Just a really quick addition to this, because I agree with the access. We've taken this approach with the iterating, with the fiber optics. It flies every time SpaceX flies right now. But the biggest problem is actually, for us, is down mass. Like, there's only SpaceX as an opportunity to bring our payload home. So
we're fixing it.
Yeah. So that I think like generally there's going to be a point in time, I don't know when, but there'll be more things coming from space to Earth than from Earth to space. And that's like our dream come true. But I think when that moment happens, every launch company will rebrand as a transportation company because they'll realize there's more money to be made coming home.
So when you're 7, it's hard to say something new. So maybe I'll just make something interesting. If I only had a half an hour to do something, I'd probably spend 25 minutes thinking about it and 5 minutes actually doing it. And where that ties in here is that the 5 minutes to actually do it is made possible through the standard interfaces, standard hardware, because it goes into a certain, you don't have to deal with that, you know what that is ahead of time. And the 25 minutes to think about it is to make sure that you understand the steps you have to take, what your requirements are, and that's partly on the cases, ISS, NASA side as well, to say, hey, these are the things you have to do. And only these things, no more, no less, count to 3, not 4, yeah, right. So take 25 minutes to think about it, take 5 minutes to do it.
Let me just go a little bit in that direction as well. I think it's not just 9 months from what was T0, right? I think we heard a very exciting mixture of different perspectives here, and it starts with a business idea. It starts with the decision, do I leave university or not, right? So I think we can all benefit if the demand grows up. Because more demand will make it more scalable, will bring down the cost, will help the, let's say, the vastly increase in the growth of the business. So let's just coordinate it and help people, support bringing up startups. Even bigger companies are looking for support if they want to afford things like Bartolomeo. So let's get the government support regulated globally, such that it's more equal. Lost a customer because he's not European. It was not the fault of the Europeans because he was not a European customer. So from that perspective, taking the full value chain.
What Oliver said was, and I really liked that, was about Booking.com. Try to get a hotel here in Bremen today. It's super expensive. So my dream is we get all these things, but the market and the honest buck will drive, the demand will drive then the market. So if you want to fly in 3 years, it will be maybe cheaper because you can plan. If you fly next week, you may pay a dime more. Or you have cargo left, and we just have a company here, it's called HostMe. It's the Booking.com for payload and satellites, or the Tinder platform for satellites, depends how you want to see it. So this I see the future, because if somebody says, I want to fly, this is the money I'm willing to pay, oh, maybe my organization is moving quicker. At least in industry that works. So, and I think this is where we think we go back to the business model. Let the market and the revenue driving that industry, because then we become pure commercial. Trust me, you get a great hotel here, but you pay double if you book it today. If you book it like me a half year before, it was a bargain. So therefore, it's up to the customer to decide how much they want to spend.
Hi, Louise again from Stanford University. I've just got a very quick question for you. A lot of your businesses are based from the ISS, and for now the ISS is planned to be deorbited in 2024.
That's not true. That's entirely not true. So just to be clear, is that the policy of the partners is at least 2024, and there's no policy, there's no law, there's no discussion between the partnerships about putting the space station into the ocean.
Okay, so the plan is maybe, I mean, there's something happening in 2024, and so I was wondering for your different businesses, are you planning to go ISS free, or are you still planning on staying with the ISS for your business?
Yeah, so the way we see it at Made in Space is that the space station is this incredibly useful platform for us to do early stage development of products and test out new ideas and try out things. As Sam mentioned, there is this readily available access to iteration. So because we can fly so often, we can iterate on ideas. So we're taking advantage of as much time as there is. If Sam calls and said, hey, it's actually 2025, we'd be like, okay, well, here's everything you want to get done before then. If it's 2028, like, great, there's more things. But the goal for us is to build up this huge portfolio of knowledge within the company of what works and what doesn't, what material science can we do, what new type of manufacturing, so that when there is no more ISS, we've already learned all the things we'll do, on a kind of a free-flying platform.
I'm going to jump on that as well. It's also important to, I think, maintain what the intention of businesses doing business on the ISS. The intention is to go there and develop their technologies, mature their technologies, and then when they're ready to take advantage of at-scale commercial operations, it's time to port them off of the ISS. That is the ultimate, I think, objective of what we're trying to do. Now, setting aside for a minute the commercial facilities that are payload hosting services, that's what they're there to do. They're hosting these companies that are also moving forward. From an ISS, from a U.S. national lab perspective, we're not a commercial company, right? We're there to enable commercial activities. Me personally, my personal view is there's going to be a need and a requirement for an existence of a national laboratory that's not tied to a platform. So the way I view national laboratory type activities, it's a campus in space. And we're working very hard now to actually move our national lab construct off of the ISS. We're working with companies like Northrop Grumman to have a national lab presence on the Cygnus vehicle, and several other companies, so that we can port around and be not tied to a physical asset.
If I could just expand quickly on what Ken was saying, I've come to view the ISS as more than the hardware, and we have an ecosystem. Companies like Northrop Grumman and SpaceX. We have international partnerships. We have what's called the Intergovernmental Agency Agreement, the IGA, which I really like. And it waives, as third parties waive the liability in many ways you can't get sued. And so to me, the ISS is more than the hardware. And I don't want that ecosystem to go away. I want to see the Northrop Grummans of the world go to other platforms and other orbits, other inclinations. I'd like to see China invited to join the IGA. Okay, not necessarily right now we're focused on the astronauts, the taconauts going to the station. That's phase one. But why not have the Chinese join the IGA? And now we have a universal space station program in LEO. So I'm not so worried about the date of the ordering of this piece of hardware. I want to make sure that there's continuity in this wonderful ecosystem that we've built up internationally.
I would like to add something. So let's assume the 28 or higher will be the lifetime for ISS with crew. So we need in-orbit demonstration possibilities. If we would like to change, we would like to change the technology, applying new technologies, either you make a lot of tests, which takes time, or you go a little bit on risk and you make a demonstration. And for that, I assume still that in the future, even beyond ISS, we will have to have stations like that for in-orbit demonstration, which, as I said in the beginning, sometimes it's okay. We took benefit from the test satellite in Germany from DLR, but the disadvantage is you don't get anything back on all kinds of things, and you have another schedule, which is not a regular schedule like using a station with some cabins, some logistics. So I assume, and I even demand that we have a possibility as well in the future beyond ISS to have in-orbit demonstration for technologies which are necessary to improve, to follow the innovation on ground, but put them in space.
So I just want to give a suggestion. Actually, our company is trying to facilitate the connection between the creative and wealthy clients to be able to access space. So I've been actually trying to connect some of the people in your company cases, and NASA has been very helpful, so it was really useful. but it's really, really hard to find information about the requirement, how to be participating in this availability. And my suggestion is if you want this to be more commercial, please help us to make it user-friendly or create some ISS for dummies type of dictionary.
That's what cats want.
Yeah, sure. That's actually a great point. I mean, I'm glad you brought that up.
Everybody's busy. Whenever I call them, they're just like, oh, we're busy working.
Yeah, so I feel your pain, because a big function of what we do at Cases in the National Lab, we're a connector of folks just like you with subject matter experts and companies who we think can satisfy what your goals and objectives are. It's interesting, this industry for its entire life, and I think this is accurate, has always designed and built according to very specific requirements. And now we're entering an era where, frankly, these service providers need to build the sandbox, they need to put a certain amount of toys in there, the shovelable bucket, the things that you could do so that you can predict what you can do, as opposed to, I want to do something in space, and the classic question comes back, well, give me your requirements. I don't know what my requirements are, I just want this thing to do something in space. Well, standardization, we heard about it, very well identified, predictable requirements and offerings, but articulated in an easy way for you to digest. We're at a point where we're struggling with that a little bit, but it's getting better. We're evolving.
Thank you so much. I've been told twice now, we need to wrap this up because they want to close the room. Thank you so much for this fantastic discussion. So I think the panelists owe an applause.